So I just finished rereading David McCullough's book, 1776, and what a pleasure it was to read this. At a time when you've got morons out there with an axe to grind, trying to make a buck by rewriting American history, this book felt like a breath of fresh air. As I was reading, I could practically hear David McCullough's voice in my head. And that's probably because the man's narration of that Civil War documentary seems to have been permanently burned into my brain. It's got that calm, friendly, authoritative sound that tells you, sit down, listen, and I'll tell you a story about when some young Americans did some really great things. The book is pretty tightly focused. It covers George Washington and the Continental Army from late 1775 to early 1777. So we get the Siege of Boston, the disaster at Long Island, White Plains, that desperate victory or death run through Trenton and Princeton. And David McCullough puts the spotlight exactly where it belongs. First off, on George Washington, a man who's trying to hold a crumbling army together with nothing but sheer willpower. He knew that the army was the key to victory, not necessarily holding on to places like New York or Philadelphia, but the army. He had to keep it together. McCullough highlights a supporting cast, legends like Nathaniel Greene and Henry Knox. And the final part of his spotlight really is the common man. He takes the time to show us the ordinary soldiers and citizens, the people who really didn't have any choice but to be brave. He reminds us of things that we might have forgotten, like the fact that the founding fathers were mostly so young. Looking at them from the perspective of 2026 is really staggering. These guys weren't dusty old statues. They were people in their 20s and 30s risking a hanging to build something brand new. And you figure that George Washington was only 43. Now, McCullough also reminds us that something like 25,000 Americans lost their lives in that revolution. And then there are some details that tend to slip through the cracks, like Molly Corbin, a woman who didn't just stand by, but actually manned a cannon at Fort Washington when her husband was killed. Is this book perfect? Well, no, it really isn't. The focus seems a bit too narrow for a book trying to tell the story of that year, 1776. If you're looking for what went on in the Continental Congress that led up to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, you're not going to find it here. And unfortunately, he completely ignores the South. The Siege of Charleston. And also, he looks back, but it's just a glance at what the British were plotting by way of strategy back in London. Now, despite that, 1776 is absolutely excellent. It's a boots-on-the-ground look at a moment in time when the whole American experiment should have failed, but somehow it didn't. Now, with the 250th anniversary upon us, I'll probably be diving into more of this American history. If you want a history book that actually respects its subject matter and tells an accurate and compelling story, give this book a look. It's really worth it. I'll see you next week.